We moved out of Boston to San Francisco, and just to give you a kind of flavor of the kinds of things that you have to deal with when you're sort of trying to figure all this out, is through another series of events we got introduced to this venture firm called Sequoia Capital. And it's the kind of thing where, that you walk into the chalets and, a couple miles away from here, and for someone who never really spent much time in California or never spent much time in the whole ecosystem, it's pretty daunting because you look and it's like, okay, there's like a picture of, Steve Jobs, and there's the original Google S1 or the stock certificates from the IPO, and you're just like, I don't really belong here. I'm just like we're just a couple of, Arash actually dropped out of school, so he gets all the startup cred. But anyway, but anyway, there we are. And we actually hit it off with the partner there, and then through, sort of muddle our way through, and I'm desperately calling people at night asking for advice on fundraising, different things, through people I'd met. And somehow we found ourselves in a situation where they decided to invest. And I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. And we're going through all the process, and it happened pretty quickly. We showed up on a Friday. We had a handshake deal on Monday night, so one business day turnaround, which was pretty convenient. And then I had this new problem, which was their finance people are emailing me like, okay, please send me your wiring instructions. I'm like, wiring instructions? I'm like, the only training I have in wiring instructions is I think that happened in like James Bond movies. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure we only have like the My First Business checking account from Bank of America that we set up in the Cambridge Side Galleria Mall. And I'm like, so this might be tough. So Arash and I go to the North Beach branch of the Bank of America, and we're like, all right, well, so you got the teller people and you got the leather seat people, and we look at each other, we're like, this is probably a leather seat problem. And we sit down, and the woman was really nice. She's like, oh, how can I help you? And I'm like, is there a limit to how much a bank account can hold? And she's like, well, what do you mean? And like, I was dressed in shorts and a hoodie, and Arash was even more disheveled. And I'm like, well, can it hold $1 million? And she's like, yeah. And so, and I don't know if she thought I was like drugs or this kind of thing happens all the time out here, but both sides very quickly stopped asking questions, and we got our routing number and everything, and went back. But there's no like startup manual where you're like, okay, well, here's how that works, and so a lot of it is really even when you look at some of these amazingly successful companies, and having had a chance to meet a lot of those people, so much of what makes startups great is really just kind of this iterative process of just having these random things happen to you, or having these ideas and just kind of figuring it out. And I talk about some of the kind of more humble beginnings, because I think there's this huge disservice that kind of of sort of Silicon Valley mythology and the things you read in magazines, where it's like, from the moment he was sitting in his dorm room at Harvard, Mark Zuckerberg sought to redefine the face of human communication. And Google, they were going to organize all the world's information and all these different things, and you sort of sit there and you're like, you're just trying to like write code and hope it compiles. And you're like, well, I know I'm not quite like that. I'm not thinking about that. I'm thinking about like, we have $60 left in our checking account, and I can't loan the company any more money. So anyway, the point is, like, in fact, Facebook, it was like project number 7 or 8 that Mark happened to be hacking on, and it just happened to sign up, the whole like Harvard campus in a couple of weeks. But Google, like they were rejected when they wanted to sell the company for $1 million to Yahoo. And so the point is, all these things start with much more modest ambitions, and even sort of the great entrepreneurs. And the goal, as you sort of reach each of these new milestones, you're like, okay, the goalposts move back, and And so your ambitions become much broader over time, and this is kind of, all this doesn't happen overnight. So when you kind of look at, I talked at the beginning of how kind of daunting everything seemed, because there's like, you know, the little sort of corner of stuff that you know, and this world of stuff that you don't. You know, often that can be enough of a barrier to stop people from even getting started. So just realize that you have to be systematic about how you learn all these things, but you know, this all happens one day at a time.
I like to study just the history of business and really excellence. And so learning about, okay, well, it's one thing to know how Google was built or how Facebook was built, but then you can learn a lot by understanding, well, how does a consumer packaged goods company run? Like, how does Swiffer, you know, like, how do you come up with a Swiffer? How do you think about competition there?
Yeah, I've certainly learned the most from studying businesses that are not in the technology industry. And I don't think people ever do enough of that.
And you want to go beyond business too. So how would Phil Jackson, who, you know, with the Bulls, the Lakers, the Knicks, like so many championships, like how do you build a culture on a team like that? How do governments solve big problems?
One important part of the Dropbox story began when one of my best friends, this guy named Adam Smith, he started a company called Zobni, and he got funding from this group of people called Y Combinator. And back then they were still doing it in Boston as well as out here. And I was literally camped out in his living room while he was working on his company. And I had been working on a company, I had bootstrapped, of all things, an SAT prep company starting sometime in 2004. And, you know, like most first efforts, you know, I had no idea what I was doing. In retrospect, we did all kinds of things wrong. But the biggest thing that was illuminating was so what happened with Adam was he got a little bit of funding at the beginning of the summer, and at the end of the summer, he moved out here. He moved up to the city, to San Francisco, and suddenly he was talking to like all these people, you know, all these billionaires and famous entrepreneurs that I'd only read about. And the next thing I know, I get this phone call from him being like, hey, we just got like $5 million from Vinod Khosla. And I was like, oh my God. And Adam and I were fraternity brothers at MIT, and he was actually my little brother. And so kind of a stark contrast between, you know, not less than a year prior, probably my best memories with Adam were, you know, in our game room at our fraternity playing beer pong, not exactly expecting to be wheelbarrowing away millions of dollars in cash. So I was like, well, all right, if Adam can do it, I can too. And so never underestimate some of the baser motivations and how they can propel you forward, or maybe as a more practical piece of advice. You know, there's some quote that you're an average of your 5 closest friends. So it can really help to be in a place where, you know, your closest friends are also interested in startups, and you're all kind of pushing each other forward in a good-natured way, but there's also an undercurrent of competition that can really be helpful.
Thank you for watching today's video. This channel is brought to you by hopelify.org to inspire you to become the very best that you were designed to be. Remember, a few simple keys, mastered and consistently applied, are often all we need to excel in each area of life. You can help make this channel even better in 3 simple ways. 1. Subscribe to receive more videos. 2. Leave a comment below to let me know what resonates with you from today's video. Or 3. Suggest a topic for a video that you will like for us to feature on this channel. Visit hopelify.org to post your own inspirational content.